At 6 months pregnant, I found out my husband had a secret wedding with his mistress. His entire family went, and later I heard them whispering outside my door, "Don't let her find out." Before I could decide what to do next, all of them got into a car accident on their way home. Imagine your entire world, everything you've built, everything you believed, shattering into a million pieces in a single, gut-wrenching moment. The man you loved, the father of your children, living a double life so elaborate, so audacious, it almost defied belief. I was 6 months pregnant, my body heavy with our second child, when the truth hit me like a cold, hard slap. My husband, Liam, the man who swore endless devotion, had held a lavish wedding with another woman, Chloe. Not legally registered, no, but a grand, joyous ceremony nonetheless. And what absolutely crushed me wasn't just the betrayal itself, it was the fact that his entire family knew. They dressed in their brightest clothes, celebrated as if it was the happiest day, joked with Chloe's little girl, and praised Liam for being such a capable man. But fate, it turns out, had its own twisted sense of irony. On their way back from this clandestine wedding, driving under the influence, they were involved in a horrific accident. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Sophia, were left in a vegetative state. Liam died at the scene. Days later, Chloe, the other woman, showed up at my door, her child in tow, demanding a share of Liam's estate. All I could do was offer a bitter, empty smile. The life insurance policy? It named only one beneficiary, me, Isabella. Liam's affair. I never suspected it. Not once. He wore the perfect mask of a devoted husband, an adoring father. If I craved cake, he'd bring one home, straight from work. If our son, Leo, wanted a new toy, no matter the cost, it was his without hesitation. "My wife and son are the most important people in my life," Liam would often say, wrapping his arms around us, his voice brimming with warmth. Even when his own parents fell ill, he stayed by their bedside every single night, without complaint. My own mother would often remark, even if he were our son, he couldn't have done more. I trusted him completely. I truly believed that even if every other man in the world was unfaithful, Liam would be the exception. But reality hit me like a cold splash of water. He had started seeing someone else as early as our second year of marriage, secretly keeping her hidden away. I would have lived in blissful ignorance forever if she hadn't sent me that photo on purpose. The picture showed Liam, standing intimately close to Chloe, both of them holding a little girl. She looked barely a year younger than our son, Leo. It was still dark outside, that in-between hour before dawn. I sat on the edge of my bed, my phone clutched in trembling hands, an icy cold spreading through my body. 6 months pregnant, simply getting out of bed felt monumental. I stared at the empty space beside me. He'd been gone for days on a business trip. Every day he'd called, asking about Leo, about the baby, if I'd eaten, if I'd slept well. His voice had been filled with such concern. But that night, he made a catastrophic mistake. His phone somehow sent me a photo of the three of them, him, Chloe, and the little girl. A family portrait of sorts. He deleted it quickly, but not quickly enough. I'd seen it. Clearly. The undeniable intimacy between them. I didn't sleep a wink. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Then, just before dawn, I heard rustling outside our bedroom door. "Mom, this dress is too tight." "Help me zip it up," came Sophia's whisper, my sister-in-law. "Oh dear, I haven't even finished putting on my own dress yet." "Hold on a moment," my mother-in-law replied. They were trying to be quiet, assuming I was still asleep, but in the profound stillness of early morning, their whispers sliced through the air and into my room. I slowly sat up, my heart pounding. My phone screen read 4:50 a.m. What on earth were they doing up, dressed up, at this hour? Feeling a parched throat, I started to get out of bed for a drink. That's when I heard Sophia again, even quieter this time. "Keep your voice down, Mom. Don't let her hear us." I didn't say a word. I slipped on my shoes and walked out. Just as I suspected, they were both in the living room, primping in front of the large standing mirror I'd placed there for convenience. My mother-in-law was in a formal, elegant dark red Cheongsam-style dress. Sophia wore a flowing pink gown, definitely something for a wedding. I broke the silence. Mom? Sophia? Where are you going so early, all dressed up? They both jumped, startled, turning to face me awkwardly. For a long moment, they just exchanged glances. I offered a small, knowing smile. And why were you whispering about not letting me here? My mother-in-law instantly looked away, clearly flustered. Sophia forced a laugh, trying for casual. Oh, you must have misheard, Isabella. I just told Mom to keep her voice down so she wouldn't wake you. Right, Mom? My mother-in-law nodded vigorously, her eyes wide. Sophia continued, one of our distant cousins is getting married today, way out in the countryside. We had to get up early to make the drive. We didn't want to wake you, so we kept quiet. She spoke with such concern, as if she truly cared about my rest. I see, I nodded, pretending to buy it all. Then, as if an idea had just struck me, I turned. Sophia, wait a moment. I walked back into my room and retrieved my favorite brooch, the one I always wore. I carefully pinned it onto her dress. Sophia's eyes lit up. Wow, Isabella. Is this the brooch you always wear? The one you said you love the most? That's the one, I said softly, my voice deceptively calm. It goes perfectly with your dress. It makes the whole look more elegant. Sophia thanked me profusely, warmly. I just smiled, told her not to mention it, and watched them step out the door. Drive safe, I called out gently. Once the door closed, once they were finally gone, I returned to my room. I picked up my phone and opened the surveillance app. What Sophia didn't know was that brooch was no ordinary pin. It was a hidden camera, tiny and discreet, a perfect little monitor. It was supposed to be just another workday for me, but that moment, so sudden, so telling. I knew they were both lying. I knew it in my bones. But just as I was about to activate the brooch's hidden camera, a soft, painful moan came from behind me. It was Leo. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. His cheeks were crimson, a terrifying, deep red. Panic, cold and sharp, washed over me. I snatched the thermometer, slipping it under his arm. Moments later, the display glowed, 103.6 degrees Fahrenheit. A dangerously high fever. My mind raced, frantically grabbing my phone. Sophia and my mother-in-law had just left. We had 2 cars, Liam had already taken one, and the other was undoubtedly with them. I had to act fast. I called Sophia first. It rang twice, then declined. Declined. Maybe she was driving, I thought, trying to be rational, trying to cling to some sliver of hope. I called again, this time my mother-in-law's number. It rang and rang and rang. No answer. Not even voicemail. I looked at Leo, his small face burning with fever, his eyes heavy, unfocused. My heart ached, a deep, sickening throb. Leo wasn't like other children. He'd had a febrile seizure once, and the doctor's warning echoed in my ears. Never let his temperature get too high. It could be life-threatening. I was out of options. So, I called Liam my husband. He was away on a business trip, just a city over. If he left right now, he could be home in just over an hour. It wasn't even 5 a.m. yet. There would still be time to get Leo to the hospital and then come back. He declined the call. That was the moment. That was when I felt something inside me crack. But Leo couldn't wait. I was 6 months pregnant, struggling to move quickly, and there was no way I could carry my son on my own. Panicking, I hurried to dress him, then ran next door, desperate for help. Sir, please, could you help me carry my son to the car? I pleaded with my neighbor, breathless, my voice shaking. The man, usually so quiet, but with a truly kind heart, didn't hesitate for a second. He helped me call a cab and gently, so gently, carried Leo down the stairs, placing him carefully inside the vehicle. Thank you, I managed to choke out, with all the gratitude I could muster. He waved it off, then his eyes, full of concern, met mine. You're all alone, he asked. You're heavily pregnant. It's not safe to go to the hospital by yourself. Where's your husband? I explained that Liam was out of town, that he couldn't make it back. Without even stopping to grab a coat, my neighbor climbed into the car beside me. He came along. At the hospital, the doctor examined Leo. He needed to be admitted for observation. My heart sank. I sat in the sterile-smelling hallway, feeling utterly cold and empty. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. My heaving cries echoed in the quiet corridor as strangers passed by, casting curious glances. Some even stopped. A kind, older woman approached me gently. "Is no one here with you, dear?" she asked. I just shook my head, unable to speak. Whispers began to ripple through the families gathered nearby. "Her husband is unbelievable," one woman muttered. "His wife is expecting, their son is burning up with fever, yet he's nowhere to be seen. If my husband ever did that to me, I'd rather stay single than have kids with him." Another added, "She must really love him." Someone else whispered, "To go through all this and still carry his second child, that takes guts." Their words, though sympathetic, pierced right through me. My neighbor returned with a cup of water. "Here, drink a little. It will be all right. Don't panic," he said, his voice a steady comfort. I took the water, my hands still trembling. "Thank you. Truly, I really don't know what I would have done without you today," I confessed. "Don't worry about it," he replied. But just before leaving, he added, "Still, maybe it's time to call your husband again. A job is never more important than his wife and children." That sentence, it echoed in my ears long after he was gone. I stared at my phone for a long moment, the screen a blank mirror of my despair, before finally, dialing Liam again. This time, he picked up. "Hello, honey," his voice came through, mixed with a cacophony of background noise. Laughter, music, muffled conversation. So strange, considering it was just past 6 a.m. "Where are you right now?" I asked, my voice flat, instinctive. There was a beat of silence. "I was just helping a friend out," he said, after a pause. "I missed your calls earlier." "What's going on? What kind of help?" I pressed, my patience wearing thin. He chuckled nervously, a sound that grated on my raw nerves. "Why? You sound upset? What happened?" He was clearly dodging. "Our son has a high fever," I said, my voice already breaking, betraying the terror I felt. "He's in danger. I need you to come home." Another moment of suffocating silence. Then, Liam's voice, now uncertain, "Honey, I really can't leave right now. How about I call Sophia? She can come to the hospital and stay with you. Would that help?" I opened my mouth to respond, but just then, I heard a woman's voice, clear as day, on the other end of his line. Liam quickly hung up, but not before I caught her words, "Liam, your daughter." Then silence. I froze. He has a daughter? Liam and I had been married for 5 years. We had only one son. I was still pregnant with our second child. That woman's child was his. As I sat there in that cold hospital, my hands still clutching the phone, I felt the world around me shift, tilt off its axis. And then I remembered. He said he would call Sophia. So, I opened the surveillance app on my phone. And just as I expected, Liam made the call. He simply told Sophia to come to the hospital and help me take care of Leo. Her voice came through clearly from the camera, sharp and unmistakably irritated. "Are you out of your mind, brother?" Sophia practically shrieked. "Mom and I are on our way to your wedding. How do you expect me to stop everything and run to the hospital with her? And besides," she added with a dismissive scoff, "I told you already, your wife is such a drama queen. It's just a little fever. Does that really call for a trip to the hospital?" Her tone was biting, almost like a woman scolding her husband. The anger, the sheer contempt in her voice, poured out, so far removed from the sweet, harmless face she usually put on in front of me. Then she hung up, clearly annoyed. Back in her car, Sophia kept driving, casually chatting with the little girl in the back seat. "Sweetheart," she cooed, "your daddy is really something. He sneaked away to marry your mom, and now he still lets that woman boss him around. Honestly, I feel bad for your mommy." It hit me like a bolt of lightning. A wedding. So that was where Sophia and my mother-in-law were headed. To attend a wedding. My husband's wedding. And that sweet little girl? She was Chloe's daughter, his lover's child. They all knew. Every single one of them. They knew Liam had a mistress. They knew he had fathered a child with her. And yet, here I was, heavily pregnant, sitting in a cold hospital hallway, trying to soothe our feverish son, alone. Everyone else was dressed in joy, preparing for a wedding. I stayed still, frozen in place. Then suddenly, a sound ripped from me, a laugh. It was sharp, hollow, the kind of laugh that rolls straight into tears. A child nearby caught sight of me and shrank behind her mother, pointing timidly. "Mommy, look," she whispered. "Why is that lady laughing and crying at the same time?" The woman clutched her daughter close and hurried away. "Come on, don't stare," she hissed. "Leave the crazy woman alone." My phone screen had been open the entire time. What Sophia didn't realize was that the little brooch pinned to her blouse was a live camera. Everything, her words, their faces, even the wedding preparations, was being streamed directly to me. They arrived at the venue shortly after. Liam and Chloe stepped forward to greet them, smiling warmly. "Mom, Sophia, thank you both so much for coming all this way," Liam said, his tone thick with affection. Chloe beamed like a bride should, greeting her new mother-in-law and sister-in-law as if they had always been her family. She carried herself like the rightful wife, not a trace of shame. As I listened to them chat, a horrifying picture started to form in my mind. Chloe had grown tired of hiding, of living without a title. Since I was from the city and rarely visited the countryside, Liam's mother had concocted what she thought was a perfect solution. They would hold the wedding in his hometown. No legal paperwork, but at least it would be a ceremony, some form of recognition. And Liam? He agreed. Chloe stayed close to Sophia, always smiling, always trying to win her over with flattery. She was desperate for their approval. The camera showed Chloe's entire face. I stared at it for a long, agonizing time, unable to look away. Honestly, I had always assumed if Liam ever cheated, he'd pick someone stunning, someone more elegant than me. But Chloe, if I passed her on the street, I might have called her ma'am, out of respect for her age. I couldn't fathom what Liam saw in her. Then, a strange memory surfaced. Liam always had this odd dependence on me, almost like a child needing his mother. I'd thought it was just part of our bond, something sweet and harmless. But now I saw it differently. It seemed he had a deeper, darker craving, one that blurred all boundaries. As the guests mingled, Liam walked over, a wide grin on his face. "Come on, let the relatives take their seats," he called out. "The ceremony is about to begin." I couldn't stop staring at him through the screen. This man I had once held each night, who had whispered sweet promises into my ear, now his gaze was fixed only on Chloe. His eyes, once so tender with me, were soft and glowing with affection for her. It felt like 1,000 ants were crawling through my chest. I could barely breathe. So, that look, that gaze, it wasn't special. It wasn't just for me. He had said he loved me, held me close. And yet, all the while, he was with another woman, loving her, sleeping with her, building an entire family behind my back, even marrying her. The ceremony began shortly after. Even through the phone screen, I could feel the warmth, the buzz of excitement. Sophia must have been standing near the front, because her camera gave me a crystal clear view of the stage. Liam and Chloe stood together, bathed in light, surrounded by smiling guests. They looked so happy. The officiant invited Liam to kiss the bride. My eyes burned red, but I couldn't tear them away from the screen. Liam turned, smiling, and gently wrapped his arms around Chloe. He leaned in, slow and sweet. The crowd erupted in cheers as their lips met. The kiss lingered. They held each other tightly. Tears streamed down my face. I began taking screenshots like a madwoman, capturing every image, every single moment of this profound betrayal. Then, with a choked sob, I turned off my phone screen. Whatever happened next, I no longer wanted to know. This marriage, it must end. I sat on the hospital corridor bench, staring blankly into the sterile distance. Leo was still in critical condition. I felt utterly, completely helpless. Finally, I reached for my phone and dialed my mother's number. "Mom," I whispered, my voice trembling, "can you come to the hospital? Leo has a high fever. It's really bad." I couldn't finish the sentence. The tears came all at once, and I burst into uncontrollable sobs. My mother answered quickly, her voice sharp with concern, telling me she would take a cab right away. I went to the restroom to wash my face. When she arrived, I didn't want her to see me like this, so drained and disheveled. I looked into the mirror, my eyes hollow, my face pale and swollen from the pregnancy. I forced a bitter smile. But as I turned to leave, lost in thought, I didn't notice the water on the floor. My foot slipped. The fall was hard. A sharp, searing pain shot through my lower body. And then, the blood came. I gasped. Panic gripped me. Help! Help me, please. Just as I cried out, a nurse who had entered the restroom saw me and rushed to call for emergency support. They got me onto a stretcher and wheeled me into the ER immediately. The prognosis was not good. The fall had caused severe trauma. The doctor's voice was heavy, somber, when he finally said, "There is no fetal heartbeat. We need to perform a termination." While I was in the operating room, my mother paced the hallway, her heart breaking with every step. She was getting on in years, and here I was, still causing her this much worry. The guilt was unbearable. When the doctor finally wheeled me out of surgery, my mother's eyes were red and swollen. She rushed to my side, holding my hand tightly. "Isabella," she said, her lips trembling. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" "You poor child." I slowly shook my head. My voice was barely a whisper. "Where's Leo?" She pointed to the room next door. "He's all right now. The fever has broken, and they're giving him fluids." I let out a long, shuddering breath of relief. As long as Leo was safe, I felt I could survive anything. My mother stayed beside me, gently dabbing her eyes with her sleeve again and again. "It's such a shame." The baby was already 6 months along. Then, her gaze hardened, and she asked, "Where is Liam? Why wasn't he here to take care of you? Especially with the baby almost due?" Her words stabbed straight into my chest. I could barely breathe. The only image in my mind was of Liam holding that other woman in his arms at their wedding ceremony, kissing her so tenderly. It made my stomach churn. "Mom," I whispered, "maybe this child just wasn't meant to be." I looked away. Maybe even the baby knew that being born into this world would only bring him suffering. My mother frowned. "Isabella, is Liam seeing someone else?" I nodded slowly, the corners of my mouth curling into a bitter, broken smile. "They all went to the countryside today," I said quietly. "For the wedding." My mother froze. "Wedding? Whose wedding?" "Liam's," I said, "and the woman he's been hiding all this time." My mother's face turned pale with a ferocious anger. She stood up, ready to storm out and confront them all. I quickly grabbed her hand. "Mom, don't," I said. "It's not worth it. I've already decided. I'm going to divorce him." She stared at me for a long moment, her expression filled with sorrow, then sighed deeply. She didn't argue. She just nodded. When Leo was well enough, the doctor gave us some medication, and we went home together. My mother stayed with us. The house felt so quiet, almost hollow. Night was falling. No one from that family had returned. After dinner, while my mother played with Leo, I started methodically going through our financial documents. First, the deed for our marital home. My parents had initially planned to help with the down payment, but Liam, ever so responsible, insisted on treating it as a loan. He worked hard, got promoted quickly, even doubling his salary. In less than 2 years, he had repaid my parents in full. My father had thought highly of him, calling him dependable, the kind of man you could trust through any hardship. His mother and sister had come from the countryside to visit during the summer, claiming it was too hot back home, so they'd stayed in our apartment. Days turned into weeks, then over a month. I had barely contributed to the house financially, so I thought we'd wait for Liam to return before figuring out how to divide everything. Then there were the savings we'd built up over the years, our joint account, the bank cards, Leo's education fund. I had studied economics, so I was the one who always managed the investments and financial planning. I knew every detail better than Liam ever did. Just as I was calculating the numbers, my phone rang. "Hello," said a firm voice on the other end. "This is the police. Are you a family member of Liam?" My heart dropped, a lead weight in my chest. The calculator slipped from my hand and hit the floor with a sharp click. Was there a car accident? I asked, my voice not even sounding like my own. It felt like I was watching it all from a distance, as if this were someone else's nightmare. But it was mine. What a surreal, horrifying day it had been. The voice on the other end was calm, almost too certain. Yes, there was an accident on the highway today, approximately 5:20 in the afternoon. The officer said the cause was drunk driving. Your husband, Liam, died at the scene. The other two passengers were seriously injured. Even after the call ended, I stood there, frozen numb. Liam was gone. My eyes drifted to the documents I had just been organizing, the ones about our assets and finances. There would be no need for a division now. There was no one left to divide anything with. It wasn't until the next day that I finally made it to the hospital. A police officer handed me a cardboard box filled with Liam's belongings. These were found in the car. Everything has been transferred to you, he said gently. He glanced through the window into the intensive care unit. The two others, your mother-in-law and sister-in-law, I believe, are in very poor condition. The doctors say if they don't wake up soon, they may fall into a permanent vegetative state. I nodded slowly, my mind sluggish, distant. The officer seemed to notice my dazed expression. I'm sorry for your loss, he said softly before walking away. Only after he left did I finally gather the courage to walk into the ward and see them. My mother-in-law and Sophia lay motionless, surrounded by the cold, blinking machines. I should have felt only grief. But mixed in with the sadness was something else, something far more complicated. Just days ago, I had lost the baby, a stillbirth. The baby had died in my womb. If they hadn't all gone to Liam's secret wedding with that woman, perhaps none of this would have happened. But there are no ifs in life. Neighbors and distant relatives, completely unaware of the full, ugly story, came to visit me one after another. They brought fruit baskets and flowers, their faces etched with sympathy and sorrow. Poor Isabella, one woman whispered behind my back. She had such a good life. And now, just like that, a widow, said another. I heard the baby. She lost it too. All from the stress, someone else added with a heavy sigh. Life always breaks where it's weakest, came the solemn reply. To them, I was the very picture of misfortune. But behind closed doors, I sat down and pulled out the insurance documents I had diligently stored away over the years. I had studied economics in college, so I took insurance seriously. In our household, I had made sure we were all covered. Health insurance, life insurance, accident coverage, you name it, we had it. I always said, if your insurance is strong, you don't need much savings. Now, all those policies were finally, terrifyingly useful. The car was totaled in the crash. Between the auto insurance, Liam's life policies, and the accident coverage, the payout was substantial. When I tallied up the total, the final figure left me staring in utter disbelief. I never, ever imagined that the greatest windfall of my life would come from my husband's death. I took care of Liam's arrangements myself. His body was cremated. A grave was purchased. Everything was done properly, with quiet dignity. As for my mother-in-law, I had absolutely no legal obligation to support her. And Sophia, my sister-in-law, was even less my concern. I called my father-in-law and informed him, plainly, coldly, you will need to come collect them. What you decide from here is your choice. Whether to continue treatment or bring them home, it is not my responsibility anymore. He fell silent for a long moment. Then his voice turned sharp, angry. Isabella, have you no heart? That is your husband's mother and sister. You won't spend a penny? You're just going to walk away. At first, I had considered saving face for their sake. But hearing his tone, my own bitterness bubbled up, and I let out a dry, humorless laugh. Let's be honest, shall we? I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. You, of all people, know I'm not your only daughter-in-law. He hesitated, his eyes darting to the side, avoiding mine. I continued, letting my anger, my pain rise. On the very day I lost my baby, were you not all gathered at Liam and Chloe's wedding? A whole ceremony, dressed up, celebrating? So don't you dare come to me now with lectures about family. You all made your choice. You stopped seeing me as family long ago. I didn't report Liam for bigamy, I added, only because of the years we shared. But that does not mean I will carry the burden you left behind. The crowd of visiting neighbors and relatives, who had started gathering around, began to whisper. My father-in-law's face turned pale. He looked like he wished the floor would open up and swallow him whole. As for me, I just turned and walked away. I left the hospital behind. I was finished with all of them. When the insurance payout finally arrived, I took Leo to Kentucky Fried Chicken. He sat across from me, his cheeks full, happy and content. Mommy, he asked, his eyes wide, where is Daddy? I paused, a lump forming in my throat, then gently said, Daddy went on a long trip far away. He won't be back for a long time. Leo looked down at his fries, a little sad. Seeing him like that, I knew I couldn't keep up the lie forever. We had bought this home because it was close to our old jobs. Back then, I was still working, not yet pregnant. But now, with Liam gone and no job to return to, staying in that house felt suffocating. Every corner held memories I no longer wanted to carry. So I decided to sell it. With that money, I would take Leo somewhere better, somewhere with fresh air, good schools, somewhere we could truly start over. My responsibility was not just to survive, but to give my son a better life. I told my mother everything over the phone. She listened quietly, and in the end, she supported me completely. Selling the house went more smoothly than I expected. Several interested buyers came to view it, and one of them seemed especially eager. We were just about to close the deal when Chloe showed up on my doorstep. With her daughter in tow, she barged into my home like a storm, shouting, causing an absolute scene. Her voice echoed through the hallway, loud and chaotic, sending the buyer running off in fear. Then, as if that wasn't enough, she threw herself on the floor and refused to leave. I kept my voice firm, cold. What are you doing? If you don't leave right now, I will call the police. Chloe's face, already lined with premature wrinkles, twisted into a sneer. She narrowed her eyes at me and scoffed. You can't scare me with that police talk, she snapped. I am Liam's woman. This little girl is his biological daughter, and we were married, too. I heard about his accident on the highway, and I know the insurance company paid out a big sum of money. I let out a dry, bitter laugh. So that was it. She came for the money. I stood there, silent, watching her throw her tantrum like a desperate circus performer. Calmly, I slipped my phone from my pocket and began recording. Her little girl, frightened by the noise and her mother shouting, burst into tears in the corner. Chloe didn't even glance at her. She was too focused on yelling at me. If you don't agree to split the money with me, she shrieked, then I am not leaving. I will stay right here all day. I let out another cold laugh and reached for a broom. If everyone acted like you, using tantrums to get their way, what would we need the law for? I said, waving the broom to usher her toward the door. Besides, where do you think you're barging into my house like? This? My husband is gone, and I am the only legal beneficiary on the insurance papers. Chloe tried to cling to the door frame as I pushed her out. Her grip was tight. Don't think that just because you are young and have a son that I cannot deal with you, she hissed. I have proof. I have evidence. She whipped out her phone and played an audio clip. Liam's voice, slurred and clearly drunk, came through the speaker. Chloe, don't worry. I will take care of you and the baby. No matter where I go, I will always support you both. Chloe looked smug, as if she had just won the battle. Then she showed me a video, one I had seen before, a clip from what appeared to be their wedding ceremony. I didn't bother watching it again. Instead, I calmly dialed building management. There's someone causing a disturbance here, I said. Chloe saw that I was unmoved, and her expression darkened further. She glared at me. Isabella, don't think I will just back down. We were both Liam's wives. The compensation should be shared equally. She crossed her arms, adding, so what if you have a marriage certificate and I don't? I nearly laughed out loud. Chloe, I said, trying not to smile, you really should study the law. This isn't just about a piece of paper. I could report Liam for bigamy. Your so-called wedding doesn't count. You were nothing more than his secret mistress. And all the money he gave you? That was part of our marital assets. If I want to, I can go to court and get it back. As I finished speaking, Chloe's face turned ghastly pale. "You lying witch," she screamed and lunged at me, trying to grab my hair. But before she could even touch me, security and staff from the building rushed in and held her back. "What do you think you're doing?" one of the guards barked. They quickly escorted her and her daughter out. Before leaving, one of the staff members turned to me, apologizing profusely. "Madam, we are so sorry about this. We should have been more careful. We promise this will not happen again." I nodded, watching as they finally removed her from the premises. At last, blessed peace returned. In the following days, I wrapped things up quickly. I negotiated with another buyer, settled on a fair price, and sold the house. With that money, I enrolled Leo in the best school in the area. I also bought a cozy 2-bedroom apartment, just enough for the two of us. The rest of the money I tucked away safely, some of it going into a small business venture. Leo and I finally had a stable, peaceful life. But Chloe wasn't done. Somehow, she got hold of my phone number. She began calling me from different numbers, harassing me, demanding half of the insurance payout. When I refused, she threatened me. I had already saved all her messages and recordings. I sent everything straight to the police. After that, she never contacted me again. Leo grew up fast. One day, when I went to pick him up from school, I saw a group of boys blocking his way, mocking him for not having a father. But Leo stood his ground. He answered them calmly and clearly, leaving the bullies speechless and red-faced. My mother once encouraged me to consider marrying again, but I always shook my head. I had finally regained the freedom I used to have before marriage. I was savoring it, not rushing to give it up again. Losing a husband had felt unbearable at first, the pain, the betrayal, the crushing loneliness. But looking back now, I wonder if it wasn't a hidden blessing after all. Over time, our small apartment began to feel like a real home. It wasn't grand or luxurious, but it was filled with warmth with us. The living room walls were soon covered in Leo's colorful drawings, some of superheroes, others of the two of us holding hands under a big yellow sun. On the fridge, I pinned every school achievement he brought back, no matter how small. A gold star for good behavior, a certificate for reading the most books, a crayon picture with "I love Mom" scrolled across the bottom. Mornings became our favorite time of day. Leo would tiptoe into the kitchen, rubbing his eyes, still half asleep, and I'd already have breakfast waiting, warm oatmeal, a boiled egg, and a slice of toast with his favorite strawberry jam. We'd sit by the window, watching the world wake up together. Sometimes, he'd ask questions that made me pause. "Mom, do you ever get scared?" he asked one morning. I looked at him and smiled. "Of course, sweetie. But being brave means doing things even when you're scared." He thought about that for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Then I think you're the bravest person I know." Evenings were peaceful. After dinner, we'd curl up on the couch with a book. Leo loved adventures, stories about talking animals, children who found hidden doors, or magic that changed everything. I'd read aloud, and he'd hang on to every word, his eyes wide with wonder. Sundays were for the little traditions we made our own. Sometimes we baked cookies, our hands messy with flour and chocolate chips. Other times, we went to the library where Leo would run excitedly between shelves, carefully selecting new stories to take home. And when the weather was nice, we'd walk hand in hand to the park, where he liked to race the wind and shout into the sky. Money was tight, but I learned how to stretch every dollar. I packed our lunches with care, mended clothes by hand, and found joy in small things: a sale at the market, a neighbor sharing fresh fruit, a quiet evening after a long day. Holidays were simple, but full of laughter. On Christmas, we decorated our little tree with homemade ornaments and string lights. Leo made paper snowflakes and taped them to the windows. On his birthday, I blew up balloons after he went to sleep and surprised him with pancakes shaped like animals. He laughed so hard he nearly fell out of his chair. Through it all, I never felt alone. Leo was my sunshine, my anchor, my reason to keep going. And he was growing up so fast. One evening, as I was folding laundry, I heard him talking to himself in the next room. Peeking in, I saw him tucking a teddy bear into bed and whispering, "Don't worry. Mommy always keeps us safe." I quietly stepped back, my heart full. Years passed gently. The wounds from the past faded, leaving behind a quiet, unshakable strength. I no longer woke up in fear or doubt. My days were no longer shadowed by someone else's choices. They were shaped by love, by resilience, by the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. And in that, I found everything I had ever truly needed. This journey was a whirlwind of heartbreak, betrayal, and unexpected turns. I found peace, but it came at an incredible cost. If you've ever faced a betrayal that forced you to completely rebuild your life, how did you find your strength? And what would your first move be if you discovered your partner was leading a double life? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'm reading every single one. Years passed gently, and in that, I found everything I had ever truly needed. But life, as I had come to learn, rarely stays gentle for long. It has a way of reminding you that even the most peaceful waters can hide unseen currents, that even when you think you've built walls high enough, the world outside still exists and sometimes it knocks. Our cozy two-bedroom apartment, once a sanctuary, slowly began to feel like a launchpad. Leo was thriving in his new school, a bright, curious boy who soaked up knowledge like a sponge. His artwork still covered the living room walls, a vibrant testament to his imagination. The fridge, ever expanding with magnets, celebrated every small victory: perfect attendance, a science fair medal, a touching poem about a brave mother. He was growing taller, his voice deepening, and his questions, once simple, now carried more weight. One evening, as we sat curled on the couch, finishing a particularly adventurous tale about a young wizard, Leo looked up at me, his brow furrowed. "Mom," he said, "all the dads in these stories are so brave." Was my dad brave? The question hung in the air, heavy and unexpected. My heart gave a familiar pang. We'd had versions of this conversation before. Daddy's on a long trip. Daddy's a hero in a different way. But Leo was older now, 10 years old, and he deserved more than vague reassurances. I paused, closing the book. He was Leo, I began, choosing my words carefully. He was brave in many ways. He worked very hard to provide for us, and he wanted us to be happy. I couldn't bring myself to tell him the full, ugly truth yet. Not all of it. Not the betrayal, the double life, the other child. How do you shatter your child's image of a parent who is no longer there to defend himself? How do you poison a memory? But I continued, sometimes, even brave people make mistakes. Big ones. And those mistakes can hurt others. Leo nodded, processing. "Did he make a mistake about me?" he asked, his voice small. "Never about you, sweetheart," I insisted, pulling him closer, burying my face in his soft hair. "Never, ever about you. You were his sunshine, just like you're mine." That conversation haunted me. It underscored a new kind of responsibility, not just to protect Leo physically and financially, but to guide him through the emotional landscape of his past, a landscape scarred by secrets. The insurance money, wisely invested and managed, provided a comfortable cushion, but it wasn't infinite. My small business venture, an online shop selling artisanal home goods, was doing well, but it demanded more time than I often had to give, balancing it with Leo's needs. I was always juggling, always planning, always thinking 3 steps ahead. The peace I had found was robust, but it was also hard-won and constantly maintained. One afternoon, about a year after Leo's brave question, I received a certified letter. The return address was a law firm I didn't recognize. My stomach tightened instantly. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that it couldn't be good news. I opened it with trembling hands. It was from Liam's father, Robert. He was petitioning the court for legal guardianship of my vegetative mother-in-law and sister-in-law, Sophia, and was also requesting a substantial sum from Liam's estate to cover their ongoing medical care, arguing that Liam was solely responsible for their condition. The letter ended with a thinly veiled threat. If I did not cooperate, they would seek a full investigation into my handling of Liam's assets and my lack of care for his family after the accident. My blood ran cold. No heart, he had accused me. Now he was trying to use the law to bleed me dry. I felt a surge of familiar anger, a fire I thought I had long extinguished. They had stood by silently, celebrated the very act that destroyed my family, and now they wanted my money to fix their problems? I immediately called my mother. Her calm, steady voice was a balm to my frayed nerves. "Isabella," she said, "don't you worry. We'll find you the best lawyer." This is an outrageous claim. She was right, of course. I had the insurance policies, the sole beneficiary designation. My legal obligations were minimal. But the mention of an investigation, the threat to dig into my life and Liam's past, sent a shiver down my spine. The last thing I wanted was for the truth about Liam's bigamy and Chloe to become public, especially not for Leo's sake. The legal battle was grueling. It wasn't about money for me, not entirely. It was about principle, about protecting what little piece Leo and I had built. And it was about self-preservation. Robert's lawyers were relentless, painting me as a cold, unfeeling widow who had abandoned her late husband's family in their time of need. They tried to imply that my refusal to pay was proof of my disregard for Liam's memory. The irony was almost laughable, if it weren't so painful. During one particularly brutal deposition, Robert's lawyer pressed me on why I hadn't offered financial support for Liam's mother and Sophia. "Didn't you feel any familial responsibility?" she asked, her voice dripping with accusation. "They're incapacitated due to your late husband's reckless actions. As his legal spouse, don't you bear some moral burden?" I looked her straight in the eye. "My primary moral burden," I stated, my voice steady, "is to my living son, Leo. A son who almost lost his life to a fever because his father was at a secret wedding with another woman, a wedding attended by the very family you claim I abandoned." The lawyer's face flushed. Robert, sitting across the table, flinched. "I did not abandon them," I continued, my voice rising slightly. "I simply refused to participate in the charade they willingly embraced. They celebrated Liam's betrayal of me, his legal wife, and the mother of his children. They joked with the child he fathered with another woman. They stood by as I lost my second child due to the stress of discovering their secret. No," I finished, the word hanging heavy in the room. "My responsibility to them ended the moment they chose to become complicit in my husband's lies." The lawyer stammered, clearly not expecting such a direct, emotionally charged response. My own lawyer, a sharp, empathetic woman named Sarah, gave me a subtle nod of approval. The truth, raw and unvarnished, had a way of silencing even the most aggressive opponents. The case dragged on for months. It consumed my energy, my thoughts, my evenings after Leo was asleep. I had to reveal more of the truth than I ever wanted to. The audio recording of Liam's drunk promise to Chloe, the pictures from their wedding, Sophia's recorded comments about me being a drama queen, it all had to be submitted as evidence. It was humiliating, painful, a reopening of wounds I thought had healed. But it was necessary. Eventually, the court ruled largely in my favor. While there was a complex legal argument about a deceased spouse's potential liabilities, the judge acknowledged that I, as the sole beneficiary of the life insurance and a victim of Liam's deception, had no legal obligation to fund his family's medical care from my assets. The judge suggested mediation for a more amicable solution, but it was clear the legal leverage was mine. Robert was livid, but defeated. The court did order a small, symbolic contribution from a portion of Liam's remaining, separate assets, which were minimal, but it was a fraction of what they had demanded. The vast majority of the insurance payout and my investments remained mine, securely protecting Leo's future. Despite the victory, I felt drained, hollow. The legal battle had brought back all the ugly memories, forced me to relive the betrayal. I found myself snapping at Leo more often, losing my patience. He noticed. "Mommy, are you sad again?" he asked one night, his innocent eyes full of concern. His question pierced through my fatigue and resentment. I knelt down, pulling him into a hug. "No, sweetie," I murmured into his hair. "Mommy's not sad. Just tired. But I'm okay and you're okay. We're okay." He hugged me back tightly, a silent reassurance. It was during this period, when my emotions were raw and my reserves depleted, that a new element entered our lives subtly at first. Mark was a single dad, a quiet, kind man whose daughter, Lily, was in Leo's class. We often saw each other at school pickup, exchanging polite smiles and comments about homework. Lily and Leo were fast friends, their laughter echoing through the playground. One rainy afternoon, as we huddled under the school awning, waiting for the downpour to ease, Mark struck up a longer conversation. He was an architect, recently divorced, navigating the complexities of single parenthood just like me. There was an easy comfort in his presence, a shared understanding of daily struggles and small joys. He started offering to carpool on mornings when my business calls ran late. I reciprocated, picking up Lily when he had a late meeting. Our interactions slowly deepened. We'd grab coffee while the kids had playdates, talking about everything from school policies to the challenges of finding matching socks. He was observant, noticing when I looked particularly tired, offering to bring over dinner one night when he knew I had a big project deadline. I was hesitant, wary of letting anyone new into our carefully constructed world. My past had taught me a harsh lesson about trust. But Mark was patient. He never pushed, never pried. He simply was there, a steady, calm presence. One evening, after the kids were asleep, he brought over takeout. We sat on my small balcony, the city lights twinkling below, and for the first time in a long time, I found myself truly relaxing in another adult's company. He talked about his own divorce, the pain, the rebuilding. I found myself opening up, cautiously, about Liam, about the betrayal, about the sheer magnitude of what I had endured. He listened intently, without judgment, his gaze kind. "Isabella," he said softly after I had finished, "what you went through. It's incredible that you've come through it all and built such a wonderful life for Leo. You're incredibly strong." His words, simple and heartfelt, meant more to me than any legal victory. They weren't about money or justice. They were about me, about my resilience. I felt a warmth spread through me, a sense of being seen, truly seen, for the first time in years. Our relationship evolved slowly, organically. It was a friendship built on mutual respect and shared experiences, blossoming into something more tender, more hopeful. Leo adored Mark, and Lily had practically become a sister to him. They were a happy, boisterous quartet on weekends, exploring parks, museums, and endless pizza nights. But just as a fragile sense of happiness began to bloom, the past, in its infinite cruelty, returned. One late afternoon, while I was working in my home office, my doorbell rang persistently. I glanced at the monitor. It was Chloe, and with her, an older, grim-faced woman I didn't recognize. My heart sank. I thought I was done with her. I thought the police had put an end to her harassment. I didn't open the door. Instead, I accessed my building's intercom. "Chloe, you know you're not welcome here. I'm calling security." "You can call whoever you want," she shrieked, her voice distorted by the speaker, but no less furious. "I'm not leaving until you hear what my mother has to say. She is proof. Proof that Liam was going to leave you." My stomach churned. This was a new low. Dragging her own mother into this delusion. "Liam's family is my family," the older woman's voice, shrill and surprisingly strong, cut in. "We deserve what's ours. You stole it from us." I felt a wave of nausea. The thought of this ugly scene unfolding in front of my neighbors, possibly even in front of Leo if he came home from a play date early, sent a jolt of protective fear through me. "Look," I said, my voice carefully controlled, "I'm not discussing anything with you. If you don't leave, I will call the police, and this time, I will press charges for harassment." "Oh, you think we're afraid of the police?" Chloe screamed, her voice cracking. "We have the lawyer now. He told us. We have rights. Liam promised my daughter a future. He promised me a future." Just then, I heard a new voice. "Is there a problem here, ladies?" It was Mark. He had just arrived to pick up Lily and Leo from their play date at a neighbor's apartment. He stood there, tall and calm, his arm around a wide-eyed Leo, while Lily peered out from behind his legs. Chloe and her mother froze, mid-rant. Chloe's face, already contorted with rage, now flashed with a mix of surprise and grudging recognition. "Who is this?" Chloe's mother demanded, pointing a trembling finger at Mark. "This is Mark," I said, stepping onto my porch, my voice steady. "And these are our children. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a family dinner to attend." Mark's presence, his quiet authority, seemed to deflate Chloe's volatile energy. She stammered, then glared at me, her eyes filled with venom. You think you've won, Isabella? You think this is over? You think you can just replace Liam? I'm not replacing anyone, Chloe, I said, my voice firm. I'm building a new life. And that life has no room for the kind of toxicity you bring. I turned to Mark. Darling, would you mind taking the kids inside? I'll handle this. The word darling had been deliberate, a subtle but unmistakable declaration. Mark, ever intuitive, understood immediately. He gently steered the children away, giving me a reassuring glance over his shoulder. The sight of him, protecting my son, my family, filled me with a quiet strength. You see, Chloe shrieked, tears now welling in her eyes. She always gets what she wants. She manipulates everyone. You had your chance, Chloe, I said, my voice low and steady. Liam made his choices, and you made yours. I chose to survive. I chose to protect my son. And unlike you, I chose to move forward, not cling to a fantasy. I pulled out my phone. My finger is on the dial. Harassment charges will mean a police record. Do you really want that for yourself or for your daughter? The threat of a police record, more than any legal argument, finally seemed to register. Chloe's mother began to pull at her arm. Come on, Chloe. It's no use. Let's go. With a final, hateful glare, Chloe allowed herself to be dragged away, her angry shouts echoing down the hallway. I closed the door, my heart pounding, but a different kind of pounding this time. Not fear, but exhilaration. It was over. Truly over. The last lingering shadow of Liam's double life, the last desperate attempt to snatch at a piece of my hard-won peace, was finally gone. Inside, Mark had settled the kids with snacks. He looked up as I entered, his eyes full of warmth. Everything okay? He asked. I nodded, a genuine smile spreading across my face. Everything's perfect. Life with Mark wasn't a whirlwind romance or a dramatic rescue. It was steady, kind, and built on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. He saw my strength, acknowledged my past, and celebrated the woman I had become. More importantly, he loved Leo as if he were his own, and Leo, in turn, found in Mark the kind of consistent, loving male presence he deserved. Lily and Leo became inseparable, a blended family finding joy in shared laughter and quiet companionship. I continued to expand my business, taking bigger risks, investing in new products. I even started offering workshops for women looking to start their own small businesses, sharing the lessons I had learned about resilience, financial independence, and rebuilding from scratch. It was incredibly fulfilling, a way to channel my past pain into purpose. The woman who once believed she was a victim of circumstance was now a mentor, a leader, a testament to the power of self-reliance. One afternoon, many years later, Leo, now a confident teenager, approached me. Mom, he said, his voice earnest, I've been thinking a lot about Dad. And about what you said, about him making mistakes. He paused, taking a deep breath. I want to know the full story. The real story. I'm ready. My heart squeezed. This was it. The moment I had both dreaded and known would eventually come. We sat down together, and I began to tell him, gently, carefully, the truth. I spoke of Liam's charm, his deception, the double life, the other wedding, the accident, the loss of his unborn sibling, the relentless harassment. I showed him the legal documents, the evidence I had collected. I didn't sugarcoat the pain, but I also emphasized that Liam's choices were his own, not a reflection on Leo, and certainly not a reflection on my love for him. Leo listened, his expression somber, occasionally asking a piercing question. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he looked up at me, his eyes filled with a new kind of understanding, a deep, profound wisdom beyond his years. Mom, he said, his voice thick with emotion, I'm so sorry you went through all of that. You're the strongest person I know. And I'm so glad we have Mark and Lily. He reached out, taking my hand. Thank you for telling me the truth. And thank you for protecting me. In that moment, a new layer of healing settled over me. The truth, finally spoken to the one person who mattered most, had set us both free. My reluctance to marry again eventually softened. Mark never pressured me, never hinted. He simply continued to be the wonderful, supportive man he was. One quiet evening, years after Liam's death, after Leo and Lily were grown and had left for college, Mark asked me to marry him. It wasn't a grand, dramatic proposal. It was a simple, heartfelt question over our usual cup of evening tea. And this time, with a full heart, free from the shadows of the past, I said yes. Our wedding was small, intimate, filled with laughter and the genuine warmth of loved ones. It was a celebration of a different kind of love, one built not on a naive dream, but on shared journeys, mutual respect, and the quiet, unwavering strength of two people who had rebuilt their lives together. My mother, now a wise and content matriarch, often visited, her eyes twinkling as she watched Mark and me. Who would have thought, Isabella, she'd say, that after all that darkness, you'd find such bright sunshine. And she was right. The scars remained, a testament to the battles fought, but they were no longer gaping wounds. They were faint lines, reminders of resilience, badges of honor. I learned that life isn't about avoiding pain or finding the perfect partner. It's about how you rise after you fall, how you heal, how you choose to define your own happiness. It's about cultivating love, not just in romance, but in the unbreakable bond with your child, in the quiet support of friends, in the strength you find within yourself. The journey was harrowing, marked by betrayal and devastating loss, but it ultimately led me to a life richer and more profoundly meaningful than I could have ever imagined. My heart, once shattered, was now whole, not because it was put back together perfectly, but because it had learned to beat stronger, more resiliently, with every piece. If you've navigated a storm that completely upended your life, how did you find your way back to calm waters? What unexpected lessons did you learn from your greatest challenges? Share your wisdom in the comments below. I believe every story holds a piece of universal truth.